one of the problems with learning analytics in general, and you guys have probably come across it with the work you're doing, we certainly come across it, is that it's very difficult to do some of these sorts of things within ethical frameworks, particularly on students. So for example, you know, a key part of what we do is to make sure that anything we're doing is not disadvantaging the students in any way. We did have a project that we were hoping was going to start this year to actually look at the question of not just second language students, but also students that are sort of you know, less capable with English, you know what I mean, in some way. You know, they're just not as good with their English language. We were interested in trying to access them through the university's help system where they work with students that are struggling with their assignments. Most of them are probably second language English students, but some of them are just, you know, native English speakers that are just not very good with written English. And we were hoping to actually investigate that and answer that question, but we haven't. One of the interesting things we found though is that I started with a hypothesis here with this actual AWAR tool where I thought if I could assess the complexity of the language through some of the metrics. I mentioned we had metrics type features that we were picking up on, and if I use some of those, get a level of complexity of the language, then I might be able to determine those that are actually pretty good with the language and those that aren't. So I did this, and the hope was to give different kind of feedback to students that were using more simplistic language, and give higher level feedback to students using complex language. And it looked really promising until I tried it across a range of poor performing students, and there was quite a number of poor performing students that wrote highly complex, poorly written English. And what I mean by that is they used big words, they had a large vocabulary, so they'd obviously use thesauri and other sort of tools to help use. They'd spell check their documents so it was all accurate and all the rest of it, but you read it and you kind of go, this is nonsense, you know what I mean? So it's kind of complex nonsense. And from the computer point of view, it measured them as complex. And therefore...
Yeah, but complexity comprehension.
So in the end, I abandoned it. You know, it was kind of a good idea in theory, but there's just no way I could tell the difference between the complex nonsense and the complex sensible stuff, certainly with the tools that I was using. And this is one area where I think some of the sort of neural approaches might have some weight. If we had a large corpus of nonsense and a large corpus of well-written English, we might be able to determine which students need the help regardless of the complexity of the language and give them different feedback accordingly. But to my knowledge, those corpora don't exist. We have talked about at UTS trying to harvest student writing that have failed. But the university has only recently started keeping assignments for longer than sort of 6 to 12 months at a time. I think it reflects what's going on in learning analytics generally. Lots of universities just haven't been keeping the data because they haven't seen the point with learning analytics gaining some ground. People in charge of data warehousing and stuff at universities are saying, okay, well maybe we should keep these sort of student assignments and student work longer and so that we can potentially analyse them. So maybe in a year or two, we might be able to sort of harvest that kind of type of document, look for all of the failed grades or, you know, poorly written documents and actually learn a model of sort of poor English from that, and then be able to ascertain from our existing corpus which ones should get feedback at that level and which ones shouldn't. The other problem with it is, obviously, is that when things are poorly written, the grammatical rules and the syntactic structure starts to break down, and therefore our rules for assessing reflection and thing are not likely to work. So it's possible, once again, that someone that comes from a language where sort of syntactic rules are kind of reversed or in a different order than English, which is quite common, may tend to use English words in the same way as they use their native language, and therefore they are being reflective, and it is a genuinely good piece of, you know, reflection, but not particularly well written English. And the computer would really struggle to identify that. So we've got a long way to go.
I guess if you're using a categorical model in our topic, then the person's automatically saying that their language, their primary language or native language is not English, then maybe that would help identify so that it would understand the structure. Like saying in Spanish would be, the format would be designed.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. You know, if, you know, I think, yeah, that's a really good point. I think from an academic point of view, in terms of teaching and learning, that presents another problem, right? Because sometimes you don't mind that the assignments are not well written in English because you're actually interested in the reflection, but other times you do want them well written in English. So there's a case of
Well, I mean, goal. Yeah, well, I think that's the idea. Is the goal is first getting them to reflect, but then the next step is then do you want to take it to the next level of engagement?
Yeah, and this is an example. You know, potentially in the future we may have these sort of complex, bringing multiple models to view on the one text, and being able to sort of highlight certain models according to the priority of the academics. You know, like maybe we have an academic dashboard where they can kind of say what's important to you, you know, more reflection, more accurate writing, in the middle, you know, those kinds of things. Let them make the decision, and then the computational models are weighted accordingly so we give better feedback. Yeah.
In your feedback to students, how dependent are your rules for assessing reflection on little catchphrases or stock phrases, like I think, I feel, I believe, I'm going to change, like these little, like, because the ones you showed us at the beginning of your lecture, if you don't use these stock phrases, then it is deemed not to be reflective?
To some extent, yes, but the interesting thing is, so we spent a fair bit of time when we were developing this early on. We said, you know, this is potentially a problem, right? And so we go, okay, let's think of how many things we can say without using those phrases. That's actually really difficult to do. So in a sense, even though it seems like, you know, from a computational point of view, it almost seems like we're cheating. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a very sophisticated model. You know, we're working with these specific phrases. But when it comes down to it, if you sort of said, how many ways in English can we express this kind of idea? And you actually find that there might only be 10 different ways you can, you know, like you can't express the idea without saying one of these 10 things.
If I can be a devil's advocate for a second. With average students, I agree. I could easily see a sophisticated student who writes you a detailed anecdote that reflects so much without using the stock phrases. And it's almost like an Aesop's fable where it comes out. But it would be an extraordinary student, I grant you.
But I always write about myself in the third person.
As do the French all the time, right?
Yeah, so I agree. And we'd be interested to see that kind of writing. You know what I mean? But what we found is the more we've tried to find that kind of writing, the harder it is to actually find it. You know? So we're very interested in students where they do fit into that category. Right? They've written this great reflection, and we don't see many salient sentences coming up but we're just not finding them.
Right.
So we go through, you know, all of the high distinction level student writing from the last couple of years, and we run it through, and we're looking for these kinds of anomalies, and we haven't found any yet. So if you do find some, please email them to me, because we'd dearly love to, because theoretically they exist, right? And we believe they exist. But of course, if they exist, then you need to be able to find them to be able to take account of them. The fact that they're so rare kind of reinforces that the approach we're taking actually generally works and is generally a reasonable approach, especially in the light of small corpora. You know, like if we're talking large bodies of writing, like large then it's a different kind of story. But even then, some of the computer-generated neural models probably wouldn't take care of the anomalies particularly well, because they'd learn on the bulk of the writing, they wouldn't learn on the anomalous writing. So even in those kind of situations, they're likely to fall through the cracks.
So is that like the dashboard part of it where it's like not feeling lucky kind of thing?
Yeah, in a way.
Have you done any studies on the effects of using the tool?
On the effects on the students?
Yeah, is it significant?
Yeah, so our paper coming up at LAC, which we're presenting next week. So it's not, it should be online through the digital library, ACM digital library. I don't think it is just yet. It's called Reflective Writing Analytics for Actionable Feedback. And I'm the first author on that paper, so if you search for Gibson, Andrew, and that title, you should find it. It's online, so if you do a Google search, it'll come up, but it's just that you can't download the PDF just yet until a conference happens. But in that, part of this study was we actually engaged the students in giving us feedback on whether they felt it was actionable. And this is a really good question, because what we found was it wasn't out and out conclusive. There were positive signs that it was, but it was contextual as well. Okay? And in a way, this shouldn't be a surprise to us. We've started from this kind of learning mandate, and we're trying to connect things with the learning. And we found that in those classes, in those subjects where reflective writing was dealt with in a sound pedagogic, sound's the wrong word. I mean, where they had a significant interest in the pedagogy around reflection and reflective writing, those students responded positively to the tool in general. In subjects where it wasn't as overt, where it was just a part of the subject but they weren't sort of really nailing the reflection aspect, the students were kind of 50-50. Some said, yeah, it was helpful. Some said, no, don't really see the point, you know. So in that sense, the learning context is really, really important to the actual success of the tool. From a teaching point of view, I'm not surprised about that finding. From a computational point of view, it's kind of disappointing in a way. You know, you'd like to think the tool is helpful to everybody, no matter the context. But I think within learning, that's not a reality. And I think if we assume that that's going to somehow, we're going to get these magic bullet learning analytics things, I think we're kind of dreaming. It's a human-centered context, and context is important. And the best thing we can do is have highly contextual approaches. And the more, you know, I think the promise of learning analytics is that we can deal with the context better as the tools become better, as we learn more, as we bring, you know, have more nuanced models and algorithms and all that kind of stuff. I'm conscious that I'm probably well over time, am I? And
yeah, it's about 1:25. I think you guys have class at 2 o'clock, or at least most of you do.
The midterm, yeah.
But I'm happy to stay around and chat more if people have more questions or would like to talk about things more. But I really appreciate you coming along, and thanks for the opportunity to meet with you today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, no problem. Scott. I don't have a card.